all bow our heads. Father, we just thank you for this time today. We appreciate you, Lord, for allowing us the opportunity to come together and to just learn from one another and to continue this discussion, to continue the dream of Dr. King and to consider what that dream looks like, reimagine and reinterpret it for the times that we live in today. Father, we ask that you would just grant us patience with one another, help us to forbear with one another, and to heal one another. In Christ's name we pray and give thanks. Amen. Amen. All right, ladies and gents, let's give our panelists a hand today. I'm going to kick off by asking each panelist if they would to just give us a brief introduction of themselves. And if you would, I'm going to start here on this end with Miss Kristen Hill.
Hey y'all, my name is Kristen Hill. I'm a sophomore at the University of West Georgia and I'm the president of the United Voices Gospel Choir.
My name is Kamari Rouse. I was raised in Carrollton. I went to Morehouse College and I'm working in the medical field.
How you doing? My name is James Dollar. I have an outreach organization called Trap Theology. We pretty much travel to urban environments and try to help people figure out better solutions on solving the issues.
I'm Sharenis, and I graduated from West Georgia back in summer 16, and now I'm working here in Carrollton, so I'm the assistant manager at one of the rental cars place here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Morris Austin. I am CEO of a Christian company called Austin Creations. It's a theater and film production company looking to motivate and uplift the culture in the community.
Hello everyone, I'm Natasha Austin and I am COO of Austin Creations.
Run things, that's what that is.
Good morning everyone, I'm Shamika Turner, originally from Long Beach, California, attend Word of Truth Christian Church.
Amen. LBC.
My name is Austin Williams. I'm the student pastor at First Baptist Villa Rica. I'm 25 years old, and I am the head of the Student Pastors West Georgia Network, which runs about 25 churches as of today. So that's what I'm doing.
All right, give our panelists a hand again. And while you're clapping, I want you to also make sure you clap for Miss Deidre, Miss Audrey, and Miss Rebecca for helping put together this auspicious. Our intent as we sat and talked together was to come up with a line of questions and a diverse panelist that would be able to answer questions that many millennials have, but also to answer them as millennials and explain to us who may be past that generation or out in front of that generation and help us understand them and help us hear their voices. And I'm hoping that once they express their answers to us, that it will help us go home and begin discussions with our children and children's children and so forth. And so with that being said, I'm going to start. The first question is, how can we reframe the word millennial so that it's not considered such a dirty word? I don't know if all of you know this or not, but when I addressed some as millennials, they were offended because of the definition. There are a lot of people that feel like they are being defined as something that they are not. And so I'm going to ask, I'll ask Austin, if you would. Help us with that question.
Well, as someone who has grown up in church my entire life, I'm a PK, preacher's kid. I've grown up in multiple denominations. First of those was Methodist, and for the most part of my life, Baptist. And a lot of the churches that I've been in have been more of, I guess, an older denomination. Nothing wrong with that, but as someone who's now a church leader, being at my age, it's hard to get past the mountain of the millennial definition. And I'm not talking about the actual definition of millennial, but what people perceive a millennial as. So it's not so much to me that the word millennial is bad. if you know, I am a millennial by definition. It's the connotation that comes with it that makes me want to almost break the mold, as it were. I don't want to be seen as the millennial who's entitled, and I never want to be seen as a millennial who's lazy. I just want to be seen as the millennial who works just as hard as any other generation. And I want that for my generation of millennials. And so to be a 25-year-old working as a leader in a church like a First Baptist can be difficult at times, whereas when I take myself very seriously, others may not. So I could say the very same thing, and I joke around about this with my pastor, but he can get up there and say something, and he'll get a standing ovation. I'll get up and say the same thing before he says it, and they'll be like, and that's about it, you know? Okay, all right. You know, it's just that, I think it's that connotation. So I think that's what it is if you look at it as, yes, he or she is young, as long as you can see the drive in that person, I think you can look past the millennial, the derogatory version of what a millennial is.
Okay. I'm gonna work this microphone, so y'all just hand it in front of you, and don't worry about the cable if you can help it. But I would like to hear from Kamari. Am I saying your name correctly?
Yeah,
Kamari. I would like to hear from you about lazy millennials that attend Morehouse. How's that
So yeah, I graduated from Morehouse in 2016. I guess to me it's not necessarily that you should reframe the word millennial, but maybe redefine. It's simply to me a descriptor of a generation like baby boomer, Generation X. So, and I've seen, it seems like each previous generation casts its own aspersions on the generation that they're a part of. But I think the disconnect that we're having is that you have to realize that the millennial generation sees the previous generation as someone who raised us. So, you know, I think it's partly taking responsible for the actions that you deem millennials not to be appropriate. That's part of what I say.
Okay. All right. Next question. How do you think, Mr. Morris, how do you think the previous generation could broaden themselves to see millennial perspectives?
My personal opinion on that would be, oh, it needs to be on? I'm sorry about that.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
I believe that if they just take the time, when I say they, the previous generation, take the time to get to know us. I know it's not all the time easy to have a conversation with a millennial, but some of us are very easy to talk to. And I think some of us are just looking for that. You know, stop, you know, talking down to us in a degrading way because they look at the millennial, look at us as lazy. You know, they can call us lazy, what we're called the weaker generation in the workforce. So we need the Pastor Motens to sit down and say, well, why? Well, why? Why are you like this? So I think if they just have a conversation with us and just learn how we think and how we see things from our perspective, because we were raised differently from the previous generations. Everything is faster and it's different. So we don't experience what they experience, you know what I mean? Y'all soft, you're softer generation, y'all don't know the meaning of a hard day of work. Well, is that our fault?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You know, so that's all I can ask is just sit down and talk to us and get our perspective and learn us. Take the time to learn us. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Dollar, I can tell you from personal experience, I went down to, when I was at ITC, and I went to the archives there and got a chance to pull out some notes that Dr. King actually jotted a sermon down on a napkin. And to hold that in my hands, I said, Lord, I am holding the actual napkin. I had to put gloves on. I'm holding the actual napkin Dr. King jotted his sermons down. I was really feeling good that he had little quick sermons like that. That made me feel a lot better about a lot of the stuff that I do. But I thought that was just a blessing in and of itself. I said, at least everything wasn't, I have a dream. Thank God. But I also thought about when I had to turn in research papers, I just run the Microsoft Word, spell checker, and all of that kind of stuff. No correction tape, none of this and all of that. I have to write a paper, and it's quite different from Dr. King having a PhD at the age of 26, without Microsoft Word, without Microsoft Office, without the internet. How do you bridge that gap? How would you make these older people even respect you on any level?
I think to kind of go on the opposite side of what Morris was saying, I think some of us as younger people should go to the older people and try to get an understanding of what they went through and the things that they experienced and the challenges they faced. So what I think is going on is a lack of respect from both ends. You got the older generation who might look at the younger generation like, you're not going through nothing, you don't know what hard work is, you don't know about this, you don't know about that. But I could put a tablet or, something modern in one of your hands, you might not know what to do with it. We're just in different generations.
Yeah.
So it has to be a level of mutual respect. Now, I was raised that I have to, people who are older than me, I'm going to give you a certain level of respect just off the bat because you're older than me. But at the same time, if you really want to get to know me, you want to connect with me, and you want me to understand those principles, it's a way to communicate that without making me feel offended. And I also have to understand, I don't really know what's going on. For the most part, I have to be humble enough to go to somebody who's a little bit older than me and say, hey, yeah, I might have did it on this computer, you might have did it on the typewriter, but at the end of the day, we go in the same direction. So I can't give you all the tools because it's you move at a modern pace, you got different differences or whatnot, but I can give you something. Don't just look at the older generation as being just getting valuable because you feel like time has passed them by. Because it's something that transcends generations. Some things, no matter how old you are, they still apply. In 1960 and 2018, so it's just a mutual respect.
Gotcha. Very good. All right. One thing I did not get to say, I just skipped over, was that we're attacking these questions in sections. And this first section is about communication. The next section is going to be about race and culture. And the last section is going to be about the future and how we perceive things are going to move going down the road. And so, let me ask Tyrannus. Do you believe that the lines of communications between millennials and their predecessors are closed? And if so, why?
I don't think they're close. Like James was saying, I just feel like there's a lack of communication or like respect. I grew up in a household like my grandma kind of like raised us as well, like the old school way. But I was born in Peru, so we came to the States when I was 6. So we had kind of like that a little outdated mindset. Back in the day, my grandma was like really strict on like what she grew up in. So the household, when we moved to Jersey, from Peru to Jersey, it was just kind of like kind of experiencing like the States where like, oh, everybody's starting to do this, starting to do that, and grandma was just kind of like, that's bad. No. So it was just kind of like, we just kind of had to shape my grandma and also explain to her, like, I respect you, but now we're in a different country, it's different, it's a different environment. So it's kind of like, we saw her from being so strict, how we saw her strict, but now I look at it like, you just were in an older generation, like, this is what you were taught, and that's what was brought up, from previous. So it's just kind of like, I just feel like it's not closed. It just needs to be like, she apologized to a lot of the things she's done, but she didn't agree with the newer things we've been doing. So I just feel like it just needs to be kind of like a communication, like both understanding, like sit down and understand where I'm coming from and understand that, like your values are important too. Like I certain things I'm still old school, like I consider precious, like the things she's taught me. So it's just kind of communication. I don't think it's close.
Shamika, you think it's closed?
In some cases, I do believe it's closed sometimes. And the only reason why I say that is because there's...
The mic's off. It's on. Is it? Okay. Just heard it. Okay.
I got a big voice. I can do that. some cases I do believe that it's closed. And the only reason why I say that is because I communicate a lot with younger people. And I have even been told that the best way for them to communicate is through text message or something like that, where I was taught you look people in the eye and you communicate with your mouth. And so if the older generation may not know how to text to a younger generation, there is a blurred line there sometimes. However, I do believe if we, like James was saying, if our predecessors and the millennials could come to a place where we have a mutual respect for one another and not think that one generation is good without the other, I believe that it can open up a little bit more, you know, where those that are older than us have the wisdom and we have the strength. We both need it, you know what I mean? Each generation needs that. So in some cases, yes, I believe it's closed. However, I don't think it's impossible to communicate with each other.
Okay. Natasha, she made reference to texting, and I'm going to just segue from that into other areas, and that which brings our next question. Do you think social media is helping or hurting us as it relates to communication?
I believe that social media is helping. Social media is the tool, so it depends on what people want to post and put out there. As far as I'm concerned, it can hurt because if you look automatically and you see what the media pushes forward, especially talking about millennials, you see a bunch of crazy stuff. It's kind of like you just have to do your research as far as I'm concerned. It will be the same thing to me as when people say social media ruins relationships. Like, social media doesn't do that. It's what you put up there, and especially as believers, if we're posting stuff or putting stuff that's not what we say we are, what we say we believe, then somebody else can see that and say, okay, well, it's not real then. And vice versa, if people who do walk the walk and post things that they do believe and that they want to push forward the gospel. And you just have to look for it because the media is going to put out what's entertaining, and drama is entertaining right about now. So they're going to put out the love and hip hop and all of that other stuff. So you just have to look for it as far as I'm concerned, because it's the way that you use the tool, which is social media. And I think that it is important that we should have it because it's the way we can reach people who aren't near us and all across the world. So it's just being accountable for what you put up there.
Yeah, very good. All right, Ms. Christian, same question. I know for a fact I've got friends that I went to high school with that I have not been in contact with for years. And they will find me on Facebook, and all of a sudden we get to rekindle friendships that we had in high school. Can that be bad? Or is that a good thing and there are other ways that people can take social media and really just turn it upside down?
I think along the same lines as Tasha was saying, it's good and it's bad, like any other thing. For most people, like people my age, we use social media as a means of getting in touch with people, like people I haven't talked to since middle school, even elementary school. Like some of my elementary schools have reached out to me on Facebook, but you know, keeping that means of communication. But I think where there's conflict and where it's bad is like if a millennial posts something that they believe, a lot of times the perception of the previous generations in reading what we say is kind of like out of context of what we meant. And so sometimes there comes this battle between the two generations where it's like, I don't think you're believing the right thing, or I don't agree with what you're saying. Well, you don't know exactly what I was saying. Mm-hmm. So I think if we use it more in questioning what people are asking instead of attacking or assuming, I think then it will be a better way of communicating between the two generations.
Okay. All right, Cameron, Kamari, I'm sorry. I've been seeing this call in my spirit. Okay. Listen, I know this is not on the list, but in light of what she said, how important is language? You know, we're talking about a lot of things about communication, and she said some of the phraseology, some of the words that are being used, other people read it, they interpret one thing, you guys interpret something totally different. So how important is language in this whole mix?
That's interesting. I think it is very important. You know, vernacular changes over time. I think our generation uses a lot of different language or lingo that you would say that maybe the older generation might see as derogatory or something, but it's not really meant that way if you're talking to someone that you know.
Yeah.
So, and also I think, just speaking on broader terms, social media kind of, like, I don't think it's a disconnect between generations. I think it just reveals something that maybe if your generation had social media that you would have seen. As opposed to just assuming that our generation is just, you know, out here acting crazy and wild and doing stuff like that. It's just revealing something that we haven't really seen yet, because human beings haven't been able to keep in contact through the internet like this ever before. So I think it's just a new frontier, new horizon, and millennials and the generation under us are starting to figure it out, but we won't really know until maybe 20, 30 years down the road what effect it has psychologically.
All right, we finished our first section. We're going to go into the section on race now. All right, and as you guys can see, I purposely, we very intentionally chose a panel that was racially diverse and as versus diverse in gender. And so I want you guys to pull all that into your answers for these next questions. These are probably the meat and potatoes of why we're really here. First question. In the year 2018, is racial inequality still present amongst millennials? And I'm going to ask Morris.
It's all right.
Well, Pastor, I would say yes, absolutely. It is still present in 2018 amongst us millennials, and I think on both ways. I've been on both sides of the spectrum. You know, I'm from Richmond, Virginia, so growing up there, I have had my fair share of being called out of my name. And going into college, I have sat in a HBCU in my criminal justice class, and my teacher, who is a Caucasian man, will openly say to an all African American class that you can make more money than the Caucasian man in this field. You can. Just because you're black, you can make more money in this field. And I was like, wow, I wonder why that is. So it's like, it's still, you would like the hope in this perfect world. No, racism doesn't exist. But, I mean, you'd be fooling yourself. And me and my wife, we live in Dallas, Georgia. We live in the country. We see our fair share of Confederate flags. We walk into stores, we get people looking at us crazy, you know, and it's sad that we are in a time and day where, you know, you gotta look at folks strange and you wondering what they thinking about you, you know, because they're already making judgment about you and you don't even know me, you know, and it's just, we're still in that time of day. It's sad, but that answer is yes. We're still there. And is it gonna go away? Only God knows.
I'm gonna go to you, Austin. Tell me, do you think it's still present? If I'm not mistaken, I think when we had our preliminary discussion, you actually shared a testimony because you got some African American young men in your classes at the church. If you would answer this question and kind of share that testimony today.
The answer to that question is yes, exactly yes. What Mr. Morris said, that is the case. I think it's a lot of what everyone's been saying, even from the millennial generation to the generation that came before. There's a lot of not listening, and that's true within the race conversation. And right before I say that story, actually that story is what made me think of this very thing. But it's like in Dallas, Villarica, Carrollton, Georgia,
Southeast.
no south. There is a gap that has not been bridged with communication. I believe that there are a lot of there's a lot of misinterpretation. I believe that, for a perfect example, the Black Lives movement versus Black Lives Matter movement versus the All Lives Matter movement, the conversation was completely missed. All lives matter, absolutely, but don't forget about why this conversation even started, because Black Lives Matter. So I believe a lot of people miss that, and I believe that definitely, as a youth pastor, I can tell you firsthand, yes, there still exists today, not just in the millennial generation, but in the Generation Z, the one that has come after us. That's a whole other panel. I just did a whole class on Generation Z that would blow this generation's minds. And what's funny is, as a millennial, we always say, why is the generation before me judging my generation so much, until I became a youth pastor, and the new generations come up, and I was like, dude, what are you doing? So I get it. I'm with y'all. I get it. But again, communication. I have an intern. His name is Tyreek. He's probably watching. Is this live?
No.
It is here.
He's probably watching.
It was not me.
I'm in trouble. Tyreek is an awesome kid. I met him when he was in 10th grade. We invited him. We do a big summer camp every year. And our college pastor had invited him to come. Never been to church before. He doesn't know his dad's never met him. Lives in some old trailer somewhere in Villarica. I take him home almost every day. Awesome kid. He comes from a broken home. And he comes to me after a year of being in my ministry and says, I feel called to be a youth pastor. And I was like, what? That's crazy. And so I'm with this kid one-on-one every day. We talk every single day. He's a junior, I'm sending him to the same college I went to because I have connections all over there up in North Carolina, and I'm going to help him out as much as I can. Tyreek tells me his problems all the time. He'll tell me that his mom's mad at me for sending him to North Carolina. He'll tell me issues at school that he has. He's got family members that are in jail. He's got family members that get kicked out of school. But meanwhile, he stays constant in reading. I give him a book to read, and he'll read it in a week, and he'll bring it back with notes. And I always print 3 copies of my sermon, one for me, one for our media team, and one for him. And he'll read it as I preach it, and he'll take it home and read it again. And he'll come back, and sometimes he'll critique me. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Critique me. Anyway, so T tells me that he's having issues at school, and I'm asking him what's up. And he tells me that he's got other friends who are African American who won't talk to him anymore. And I asked him why. This is a very true story. He looks at me and he says, they tell me I'm the whitest black kid they know. And now they're not talking to me. They say I hang out with that short beard guy too much, and so they haven't been talking to me. What do I do about that? And I'm not afraid to tell you I don't know. I have no idea how to fix that problem. And so is it alive today? Absolutely. Within multiple, there are people that are white that will not. I'll let him speak every now and then on a Wednesday night to our big youth ministry, and there are kids that won't come. And that's the generation coming. That's not our generation. A lot of people get confused. Millennials are the leaders now. Not over everybody, but leaders over this new generation. And they are dealing with it in their schools. And I think it's a lot of miscommunication. And it's a lot of people not gaining perspective on what others are going through. Just like a Tyreek who's really trying to make a difference in his own life. But he's got people that his words were, my people won't even listen to me. So how can I get multiple to listen to me?
Wow.
And so that's something I'm trying to work through with him. But yes, it is a lot.
You also mentioned the challenges that you face internally, knowing that he wants to go to your alma mater.
His mother told him that he wants to go to this college I went to, North Carolina. If you think that Carrollton is country, you're wrong. This place, Hendersonville, North Carolina, is in the middle of the mountains, okay? And it's country, okay? They call it mountain preaching up there where I went. And I'm telling you right now, he will be, at least when I was there, he'll be one of maybe 2 or 3 African American people in that school. And his mother told him, he will not, she told him to his face, you're not going to have the same opportunities that Pastor Austin had because he's white. And so she's trying to talk him out of it every way he can. And I told her, I'm going to be his opportunity when he gets there. I'm gonna try my best to take care of him from here. And it's just interesting. It's an interesting, and I've never had to deal with this firsthand before. Just to be transparent, never ever had to deal with something like this before. And so dealing with it all of a sudden as a leader of this kid is very interesting, very eye-opening, and something I'm growing from. And I believe that's all I can do right now.
All right, James. This is kind of a meaty question, so I may pass it around a little bit. I think we're doing pretty good on time. How can African American millennials continue to press forward in their personal and professional endeavors while at the same time remaining connected to the passions and sacrifices of their predecessors? So you got to kind of do this.
I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier when I was talking about communication, as far as reaching out to the generation before you to learn what they've been through, the challenges they face, but at the same time studying and having the knowledge of where it is you're trying to go and what it's going to take to get there. I would be lying to you if I told you I didn't feel like being African American has put me at a disadvantage in certain situations. I do Christian rap music. I go into churches, and a Caucasian pastor come to me and tell me, man, you don't know how many times I wanted to cancel this event throughout the week because I thought y'all were bringing the devil into my church, or all this kind of stuff. And once I had a conversation with him, let him know we serve the same God, we serve the same Jesus, and and I didn't come in like, you looking at me like, look at you like this, like I had to carry myself with some kind of integrity, character. You can't go in and just be ignorant. You can't respond to ignorance with ignorance. And one thing I noticed is, like, you put 2 kids together, 2 little small kids, they're white and they're black, they'll play together with no problem. So what you're dealing with is, in fact, ignorance. It's a taught behavior. People are telling you, hey, don't play with that black kid. And even in the black community, don't be acting like them white folks. It's like it's on both sides. So what happens is, this ignorance is perpetuated throughout our culture. So you got a group of people over here looking like every white person is racist. Then you got a group over here saying, oh, these black folks, man, they might try to rob me, they may try to mug me, this and that. Instead of just dealing with each individual on a person-to-person basis. I know some black guys who educated, well-groomed guy like Kamara. And I know some white guys in the trailer park that a woman will be grabbing her purse like, what is he gonna do? So it's not about where you're from or what color you are, it's about individuals. So what I try to do is treat people like people. When I go places, and I have been treated unfairly, I don't respond and say, well, bump y'all and start spazzing out doing the black guy thing and start getting angry. I say, you know what, cool. Because at the end of the day, what the hope is, when they look back on the situation, they'll say, wow, I treated that man with total disrespect, but he still didn't respond in the way I expected him to respond. And by doing that, we can change the way people think about you. We can change the way people will view you. And and if you know the odds are stacked against you, work harder. Put in more work. We can use the excuse, well, they won't let me do this, they want me to do that. And your whole life will pass you by because they won't let you do this, they won't let you do that. Work hard enough to the point where they have to respect what you're doing. But at the end of the day, you're trying to get involved in business. Business is business. They're trying to make money or they're trying to make progress with their business. If you're the best asset to their company, sooner or later that color going to disappear. They're going to think about, okay, how can he benefit my company by making money or promoting my company or marketing my company? So it's just, don't be ignorant. If you see it, don't respond to it. And it's easier said than done because, there's been times I had to go on my car, and really just sit there and really just think about the consequences of what I thought about doing initially. And say, you know what, at the end of the day, people who look at what you do and respect what you do, how would they respond if they see you on the rocks at the gas station? Like, man, James just spazzed out, just slapped somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like, everything, those are real emotions though. But you have to be able to be mature enough to contain that and understand what's at stake. And when you make a choice, you realize your choice affects more than you. Like, everything that we do should be for the people around us, our community, especially if you call yourself a believer. I have to live in such a way where people can see that with my lifestyle, and I'm not just being selfish with my actions.
Okay. Joannis, would you like to take a stab at that? You mentioned, would you like to take a stab at that same question? I can read it again, but you mentioned your grandmother. That's what kind of sparked you in my head.
Oh, okay.
And you also, I know you also kind of progressive in your own career path. So how do you bring grandma along with that same train to move forward?
It's just, it took.
Well, at least grandma, at least traits, pieces that you just aren't willing to let go of because they mean so much to you. Those things you talked about a minute ago.
One main thing is respect. They taught me about respect. I don't see color. And like, kind of like that, like, you know, backtracked a little bit. I lived in Jersey. I was exposed to like racism when I moved to Georgia. It was a shocker. I didn't know, like, when we talk about racism, I thought it was like, you know, like, oh, it's gone. Like, you know, we moved past it until I moved to Georgia. I experienced it, like, especially my sister. She was bullied. And I used to think, like, why are you coming home crying all the time? Like, I was very tough. Like, I didn't let people, like, bully me. I was just, like, it was, like, a different environment from what I was used to. It was so diverse. In Jersey, like, I never really looked at it like, oh, like, this subject is still going in 2007. So when I moved down here, that's when I experienced that. And like from James was saying, like, you know, I've learned so much, like, you know, getting older, not being in a work field, to be professional. And also letting, like, just, I feel like it's communication and like, people don't understand. They are like ignorant. They're like, I don't know if it's because they don't want to learn, but it's just, I feel like that's one trick I got from my grandma, is just having patience and teaching people, like, you know, I've been called my name, like, before. Like, now I work at Enterprise, and how many times I hear people, like, you know, they get upset because I can't put them in a rental, and it's been coming from, like, white people, black people. I've heard it all, like, about me. So it's just learning to just kind of communicate with them, not spaz out, and just letting them know, like, hey, like, you know, this is why I can't do that, but let me teach you a little bit about myself, like, you know. And then they come back and they call me and apologize since they want to give me a tip. It's cool, it's okay. I'm not gonna, like, you know, disrespect you because you don't understand certain things. Like, let me teach you, like, about my culture. You know, I'm not Mexican. Like, I hear people saying, like, do you speak Mexican? I was like, no, ma'am. Mexican is not a language, but you got to teach Spanish, you know? So it's just kind of like teaching. I get that a lot, trust me. And then it's just like, especially when I was the president, I mean, I'm not getting into politics, but I hear it all the time. Like, I had a customer, cool guy. I was joking with him the whole time, and then, you know, my name is different. So he was like, what's your name? And I wrote it down for him. He was like, how do you say that? And I was like, Joannis Rossetti. He was like, what are you? I was like, oh, I'm half Peruvian and Italian. He was like, oh, are you legal here? Can you work here? I don't know if he meant it, like, jokingly. And I was just kind of like, you know, I'm not going to get upset. I was just joking with the man, like, you know, probably, you know, I'm going to let it slide. So I was just like, and had my other co-worker, she was there. She looked at me and she looked at the man. She was just like, Jay, did he really just say that? I was like, I'm cool. I just turned around and I continued writing, and she was just like, I zoned out, and she was just kind of like, she's Peruvian. And then he was like, I mean, I'm just saying, right? Like, the president just tried to get everybody, y'all kind, like, to leave and stuff. And I was just like, I was still just writing. I was like, I zoned out. So it's just like stuff like that. I just feel like people are not educated, and that's one thing I got from my grandma. It's just, you just gotta learn how to, like, talk to people. You just gotta, you know, you can't just be mad and, like, curse them out. Like, I'm gonna get fired for, like, fighting with the customer. Customer service is all about customer service, you know, regardless. So I just gotta show them that, you know, I'm a professional. I didn't, like, react how they wanted me to react. So it's just kind of like teaching them, like, you know, they call us lazy or like we don't know how to talk to our generations. By me, I feel like, you know, I'm just gonna show them like that's not my, you know, what I'm labeled, but I'm gonna show you that I'm a professional woman. I'm management here, so you're not gonna go above me. So, because then later on, it's gonna go into my area manager, she's a woman too. So, you know, like it's also hard for a woman too, especially to be a minority. So that's one thing is like be tough, you know. Just make sure you work hard. That's one thing I do admire about our older generation, because they did work hard. They went through stuff that we haven't been through. Grandma had to walk to school, like how many miles, she tells me all these stories. Like, you know, they didn't have the opportunities that we had. So that's one thing I hold, like it's so important to me to work hard and prove to people like women, especially minorities, to like go ahead and like keep pushing. Like I'm not lazy, I work hard. I make sure everything I do, it's special for the people I'm working for, especially for my daughter. Like, you know, I'm trying to teach her as well. Like she's a different generation now. So it's just like they're viewed a little different from us. So I want to make sure that she doesn't see the colors, like make sure we keep that thing from grandma. Like she told us to be strong, independent women, you know, make sure like you don't see color and just, you know, make sure you love each other. That's one thing that's very important. And I'm not going to run it off. So.
No, you're fine. Very good. Very good. You even answered our next question. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. I mean, I appreciate you being so candid. Very much so. Well, since you went there, I'm going to ask this question to Ms. Christian. How do you as a millennial, and I may bounce this off a few of you, how do you as a millennial hold it together in the midst of all of the racial unrest we're currently facing as a people and as a country?
I guess piggybacking off of what she was saying, is like really leaning on those principles that were instilled in me as a child. More so my Christian values. Making sure that I don't allow ignorance and just hatred to change who I am as a believer. Like I'm still called to love you in spite of you being reckless. I'm still called to love you in spite of me disagreeing with what you believe. I'm still called to love you in spite of you hating me. Like the story of Jesus is the greatest example. It's like they beat him to death for dying, and he died for them, even though they didn't care. They didn't love him. They didn't love Jesus. So why should I be any different? I just try to think about that in the back of my head all the time when, you know, you walk in your African American literature class at a PWI and the professor is not African American. When you walk into work in Dallas, Georgia, and customers come in with a heavy redneck drawl, tearing you to pieces, still smile, because Publix is where shopping is a pleasure. I think about that in the back of my head all the time. All the time.
Those cookies are off the chain, by the way.
Thank you. I like them too. But yeah, just that's the only thing I can really say. That, and then it kind of reminded me of the previous question. It's like my grandma tells me stories all the time. They're from Villarica. They lived in Villarica, but they had to come to Carver High. So, you know, experiencing people spitting on them and they can't do nothing about it. People doing all of this crazy stuff and they can't do anything about it, because if they do something about it, that's your life right then and there. And it makes me more appreciative when I go to school. It's like my grandma might not have been able to go to West Georgia. Like there were only so many schools that she could have gone to. And you know, it makes me appreciative of the opportunity to go to school and have an education higher than just going into nursing and different things like that they were only limited to. Yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question, no side note? How do you think your perception would be right now if you did not have grandma?
I don't know. I guess I never really thought about it. I would hope that it would be the same because of who my parents are. And I would hope it would be the same because I am who I am. But I don't know that I don't know that it would be any different. That's why it's important to open communication. It's important to not be so wrapped up in the fact that I'm a millennial and they don't care about what I have to say, so I shouldn't care about what they have to say. It's like, it's more important because they impact us so much more than we give them credit for. So I don't.
And the reason I ask that is because generally speaking, you have about a 10-year span in both directions on speaking influence-wise. So you got about 10 years behind you and 10 years in front of you. And with your parents being your influence, that's great. But your grandmother having influence, it goes back further. Your parents might have had a tough time, but might not have been nearly as tough as your grandmother or great-grandmother. You know what I'm saying? That generation that quit school in the 7th grade to take care of the family, that kind of stuff. It's just an entirely different. And I think if the more we sit down and talk, I think that's where the respect comes from. I don't think it is just what we're saying today, a lack of communication. You know, and it's really tough when people don't have the opportunity. That's why I asked that question. Don't have the opportunity to have that grandparent, you know, that matriarch or patriarch of the family that can just really tell you, let me tell you where your eyebrows came from. this is your granddaddy's no one.
Right.
Paul Ellis. You know what I'm saying? All right. Let's ask this question, and I'm getting down to the end, so I'm going to ask the audience. I've already got one. If you have any questions that you would like to ask, jot them down on a piece of paper. I'm going to ask that you print them. Praise the Lord.
Y'all can't read
That's
first.
my Koine Greek. my Koine Greek is not what it used to be. So, okay. All right. Shamika, what do you think is going to take to turn us around? I mean, we got a situation on our hands. We got all this knowledge in the room. We have babies that are born with an iPad in their hands.
Amen.
They're calling your friends with your phone, and you don't even know it. This is no time for us to be shallow and racist. We need each other right now. How do we turn this thing around?
I personally feel that the way that we can begin to turn things around is, we've talked so much about communication. For me, it's going to take Pastor Austin's taking up with a gentleman, you know what I'm saying? Or it's going to take certain people taking up with just even one person, you know what I mean? There's so many people who want to just bless the world within the masses, you know what I mean? They want to go out and they want to change everybody's views. But if I take up with one young person, or if I take up with one person, just try to influence them as much as possible, not to think so much on racial tension or the lack of communication with a generation that's before them, but try to, I use this term where I say I want to place nuggets in somebody, and a nugget can go a long way, you know what I mean? So I think just being able to mold somebody and influence somebody one by one, you know what I mean? I think it can change the direction of the next generation, you know what I'm saying? You never know what you would say to somebody that they will take out and influence thousands, you know what I'm saying? Where you may have just influenced one person, that person can influence 100, or they can influence 1,000, you know what I mean? So I think when we take our mind off of wanting our name to be great because we've affected so many people, well, if I can just take the time out just to affect one, it can change the world. I personally believe, because, you know, with each person in here, you can affect somebody either negatively or positively with what you influence them with, your words, your actions. I think everything goes hand in hand. So I think that's part of the turnaround as well. You know, I mean, one person can help one other person. I just believe.
Okay. Natasha, how do we turn this thing around? You got brand new baby over there.
Duh.
Got Morris Austin over here about to star in a movie coming out. One that actually speaks to the issue of race. So, what are some ways you believe that we can turn this thing around?
Like everybody's been talking about the communication and bridging the gap between that, but even before that, I think if, especially us as believers, if we just go by what the word says and really stand on that and walk that out, use that as our foundation, then that will make it a lot easier when it comes to communicating and then trying to blur those lines or unblur those lines and to reach other people. I think we just use that as the foundation and just make it easier.
Good. Yes, sir.
Since we are one, what it's like my wife said, I mean, what do you want to get out of communication? Everybody wants to get understanding out of communication. So we're all looking for understanding. Every generation has a group of people that cry out, they just don't understand. So, if we understand that there is an enemy out here that is seeking to kill, steal, and destroy, maybe we'll spend less time fighting each other. And we'll spend time on this spiritual warfare out here. It ain't flesh and blood out here. It really ain't. It ain't white on white, black on black, and vice versa. That ain't what it is. So if we understand the bigger picture, whatever your faith is, you need to get down on this spiritual warfare, and we got to go to war. It's a fight every single day to be a white man. It's a fight every day to be a black man, a woman. It's a fight. So understand that I'm not fighting with my brothers and my sisters. I'm fighting with the enemy. And he'll jump inside any one of us at any time if you let him use you. So we just gotta get that understanding, and then we can fight on his playground and keep God first, man, and fight the good fight.
All right. Austin, you just came from a church growth conference. Just barely made it out of here by the hair of your chinny chin chin. And the pun is intended. So how do we turn this around? I mean, you're a youth pastor of a thriving church there in Villa Rica, almost in my backyard. I can almost hear y'all services. And you have some unique challenges. I mean, vast, unique challenges. I know this question is bigger than anybody at this table can answer. If I knew it, we'd fix it. We'd write a book or something. But just give me your perspective, man. How do we begin to turn this thing around?
Well, it's a combination of what everyone's kind of saying. It's Jesus, and but more of a surface level, I guess. Communication. As soon as you silence someone else, you've given them the right to silence you. So I think that until you start opening those doors of communication, those are big doors. But small keys open big doors. So I'm sorry, I'm preaching. That's what I do. But I think that's important. I think if you can do the small things, those things become big things, and just listen, talk to one another. I think that's where it gets easier, maybe. I think if you try to understand what someone's perspective is, because I'm not going to get what, anyone up here's perspective. No one can. I can't do that. I mean, I applaud you for picking the whitest guy you could find. I'm Irish. I just can't identify with a lot personally. But as someone who sees it and who has only been able to see it on a surface level up until the last 6 years, dealing with it for students who ask me what to do, and I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. I'm better at dealing with things when I have dealt with them myself, as any of us up here would be, or any of us sitting down. But I don't know that the only answer is Jesus. Other than that, it's just communication. But there's a lot of people that want to silence others, and in fact, they end up silencing themselves. I just think that's our issue at this moment.
Okay. All right. I've got a couple of, I've got 4 questions up here I'm going to ask you guys. And you guys are not familiar with these questions, and so I don't think I'm going to stump this panel. But if I do, I'll have no problem jumping in. Okay, so just trust me, I got you. All right, I've already read them, and I'm not scared. So just roll with it. Okay. Okay. You all discovered racism amongst blacks and whites. What about the racism amongst millennials in the context of darker and lighter skin? What is the perspective concerning the issue, especially concerning women? Austin, you can speak to the lighter skin. All right. I'm going to read the question one more time, and I'm going to let you guys take it. You all discovered racism amongst blacks and whites. What about the racism amongst millennials in the context of darker and lighter skin? What is the perspective concerning this issue, especially concerning women?
I'm gonna let a woman finish the end of that question.
Wisdom, my brother, wisdom.
However, I may be the darkest brother at this table. Am I? I might be.
You think you're one?
No, but we joke about that kind of stuff. On the job, at school, there's this gray area of this light skin and dark skin war.
Okay.
And for some reason, you know, one feels like they're in season and one feels like they're not in season. One feels better than the other, one doesn't. You got good hair versus not. It's like, it's just this whole tug of war, and it's like, what is going on? We're black. You know, all of us are really intertwined with all kind of things, but it's kind of like, what is the point of fighting amongst us? They just find all kind of things to divide. You got all kind of, and social media is one of the key things that'll help drive this force. They just, soon as they want to cause division anywhere they can, and the light skin, dark skin war is ridiculous, and it needs to stop.
Nah, I got that.
Coming from the woman's perspective, me personally, as I grew up, I had a very poor image of myself, very almost self-hatred, and because I hated my own self and because I wasn't happy by the way I looked, it came out on other women who I felt I should have looked like. You understand what I'm saying? So a lot of that comes from sometimes just low self-esteem, low confidence, where I have to look at someone who has a lighter skin complexion than mine and say, oh, they think they better than me, you know, or because my hair goes out into a fro and hers, you know, may, you know, fall down, I'm thinking that it's better than me. But once I learned that God made me beautiful, that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, marvelous is His works, I was able to see the beauty in me and the beauty in others. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times that kind of stuff comes out because there's just an underlying issue with that other person. And not only that, but we have to be real and think about where a lighter skin complexion comes from. We have to think about, you know, some of the things that we have to think about, you know, masters raping slaves and making lighter skinned black people and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? So if we come to an understanding of that kind of stuff, then it wouldn't be so hard to just, you know, I look at my sister, I'm like, you better go, girl, you know, because you can't just look at somebody and say, you know, oh, she's light-skinned, so she thinks she, you know, she bougie. Automatically she bougie because she light-skinned. No, it's the same thing as getting to know somebody of another race. You got to know people for who they are and what they are and how they treat everybody else. So, that's my opinion.
I'll square that question by asking this. What are you going to do with the next generation that's going to have even more children that are born to interracial couples, and the tension that that creates within the family, within the school systems, and within churches. You know, we got to broaden ourselves to be able to be inclusive. All right. Next question. What do we baby boomers need to focus on most in an effort to not be offensive to millennials? What's the worst thing we're doing negatively towards you right now? She reached for the mic. It's on now.
I think it's having an open mind. I'm not saying you gotta accept everything like millennials are doing now. You know, it's okay. But I feel like you have to have an open mind whenever you talk to a millennial or somebody younger. You just have to sit down and don't just be biased and just judgmental as soon as they tell you something. Just have an open mind and understand and ask why. Okay. Ask why you're doing this. Just like I would ask older generation, why is that? Like, why did you did it this way? Or why do you think this is better than my idea? Or I just feel like when people are so close-minded that they're just stuck in their ways that sometimes they miss the actual idea. They just focus on being right. Like, well, this is my way and that's it. They just closed and they just don't want to hear you out because I said I've done this before, or people previously from me have done it this way. Yeah. So it's just, I feel like it's having an open mind. Don't just sit there and just judge it. Understand, but have an open mind and accept it, because to you right now it might seem like, oh, it doesn't make sense because it's not happening within my family. But once it happens to your family, now what? You already said that you're not going to accept it, but now it's happening to your kid or loved one, So you just have to have an open mind.
And I will say, on behalf of those of us who are not millennials, this open mind concept is new to us because we are the children of the because I said so generation. So y'all be patient. Be patient with us.
That's what
you feel what I'm coming from? All right. There was no open mind. There was no democracy. There was a lot of pain. I won't go into that today. But, all right. Next question. This is a great question. This individual says, I'm 33 and I'm a millennial, but I'm well traveled and I consider myself black, not African American. I come from a country where my people are 85% non-white. Women are in top positions. Black folk have been on my currency my whole life. So is this race thing an American issue? And how exposed to the outside are Americans who don't travel?
Wow.
I think I'm gonna let you do it, and I'm gonna come to you. All right?
Well, I'm from Peru, and I don't think it's just an American thing, because even within my own country, there's racism. We have Afro-Peruvians, and they're kind of like, I was 5, so I really didn't understand until I went back and kind of understood. They still have that stigma where it's just, I'm light, you're dark, you're over here, you're over there. So I don't think it's just an American thing. It's just every country has their own racial issues within each other. So I don't think it's just an American issue. I think it's worldwide. And we had our struggles too. My grandma, looking back at our country, there was terrorism. Here in the States, I've heard about terrorism, but we actually have family that dealt with it. People were dying, they were killing people. I had uncles and aunts that got killed with terrorists, and they would just leave their bodies there. And they put a note saying, if you pick this body up, you're next. And my mom would tell me stories like that. There's times where she had to run, they would just come invade the town. They just have to hide. Grandma, same thing. So I feel like sometimes we just focus on one thing when it's kind of like an issue worldwide. If we don't start fixing it in every country, it's never gonna go away. So.
I feel like I'm just learning so much. Do y'all feel like that? Yeah. Good stuff. Good. All right, bro.
I would say I traveled to a few different countries, Trinidad, Puerto Rico, whatnot. And this kind of what she was saying. It's like, even though they're from the same country, certain people from a certain side of town were looked down upon by people on another side of town. I was in Trinidad. It's an area I think it's called Levantia. It's a real bad area, to the point where if you outside past 11 o'clock, whatever happened to you is on you because the police not coming to get you. So it's certain areas, they look at people outside of their community as the bougie people or the people who got it made, and they got the money. So when you come up there, you're a target. And I think it goes back, you think about a lot of places from the islands and Africa and different things, I think we're still dealing with the issues of slavery from the point where we've been taught self-hatred. We've been taught to compete and knock the other one down to get in the house and different things of that nature. Instead of saying, hey, let's work together, we've been taught that, oh, you're my enemy, even though you look like me. So you hear a lot of white people say, what about the black on black crime and different things of that nature? Look at the situation. You got a group of people in the environment where they feel like they don't have the resources to survive or to adequately take care of their families. Drugs were brought into the country, not by the people who live there, brought by outside source. And you've been told, okay, this is a way that you can make money. Okay, you go to certain neighborhoods. I go to a predominantly rich neighborhood. I don't see Church's Chicken. I don't see liquor stores on the corner. I don't see, all the stuff that we see in our communities. So we've been taught to compete with one another, and then we've also been given the tools to contribute to us destroying one another for our own personal gain. And it's not going to be until we say, you know what? They are banking on the fact that I'm going to try to kill you for area of land that doesn't belong to me anyway. They're banking on the fact that I'm going to sell you crack because you can get high and I can make money and take care of my family. And not realize that I'm eliminating my race as a whole. So I think in other countries you see it in America. And then you have people from other countries who look at they're darker than me from another country, but they'll look at the black American and say, oh, you're lazy. We don't respect you. Like you go to Africa. Like you go to Africa in some places, I don't care how black you think you are, you will not be respected, and your life may be on the line. It's just that whole thing. So I don't even think it's a black and white thing. I think once again we have to go back to the stem of just ignorance. And black people at an early age weren't allowed to read, we weren't allowed to be educated. And you got to think about the physical and mental trauma that comes from something like as horrible as slavery. It takes years and years and years to overcome, centuries to overcome that kind of stuff. And we still have it. Because you still see it, And so I think racism is just a global thing. You even see where you have, sorry for talking so long, but you see in some countries you have people who are Muslim, believe in Islam, then you have Christians. They may be the same color, but because they believe a different religion, they'll kill them. So I just think it's a global issue.
What? Okay, all right. I have a whole lot I would like to say, but next question. All right. This is a king question, yeah, definitely. This is rooted in king thought. You guys are an incredible group. First question, do you represent your other peers? For example, many of you have discussed your faith. Is that common among your peers?
That's good.
Let me read it again slow.
Okay. Yeah.
You are all an incredible group. Do you represent your other peers and the people around you? For example, many of you have discussed your faith. Is that common among your peers?
Wow.
Do your peers do that as well?
Wow.
Or are you guys just standouts?
A lot of my peers do. And that's because I made the choice to surround myself with like-minded individuals. I'm from East Atlanta. I'm from what people call the trap or the hood or whatnot. And a lot of guys that grew up around, they got the same mentality they had when we were in elementary, high school and whatnot. And I had to make a choice. I said, okay, either I'm going to do the same thing that I know what I've seen, or if I want different results, I got to do something different. Now, because I've learned the pitfalls of that lifestyle, I don't just run off and just live my life. What I try to do to the best of my ability is go back to those places and try to show them like, hey, it's another way. You can make it without playing sports or rapping or selling drugs. It's opportunities out here if you're willing to put the work in that you won't have to be in this situation. Now, if they don't want to listen, that's on them. I'm not going to put myself in a position where I'm falling back into that same hole but trying to stand myself trying to help grown folks. Now, you want to be grown and do your thing, that's on you. But I'm at least go back and try to help. But now, my circle now, like, everybody who I associate with myself, I call myself a friend or a brother for the most part, they share the same faith that I do.
I would say I do and I don't. I do in the sense of, I'm a pastor. A lot of my friends are pastors. So it's easy to do that. And we're expected to do that. But I would say that the question becomes, and I don't know it just depends again on perspective. I know I've used that word a lot, but the question would be: is Jesus your heritage, or is he who you're following? And that's I think that's the key, because a lot of us, I have people that I'm close to or know or that go to churches around me or my church even, that will post on Facebook all day long about how much they love Jesus and how much they, we have to be living that Christian life. And
Come on, say it.
first.
That's good.
But then, like, when it gets down to it, like, do you hate someone just because they are who they are or what they are? And that's in every scenario. I know there's that old WWJD, but man, it applies to so much. As soon as, and the reason I say heritage, because if you grew up in a Christian home and you have to have those Christian values, but as soon as someone that doesn't look like you walks in and your first thought is anger, that's not Jesus. And so I question that. If you are, because to be a Christian is to be Christ-like, and Jesus represents love. Love is an action, and if you can't show it to anyone and everyone, then I don't know if I'm preaching too hard, but I'm questioning that. If that's what if you call yourself that, why do you call yourself that?
Wow.
I'll say this also in keeping with King thought. Something that's interesting about Dr. King is that he did not just unite Christians. Right. He united everybody. He did not just unite black people and white people and people of other cultures, because this was a human problem. His idea, his whole theology was to unite the human family while maintaining his faith. Preached in the church every Sunday, but he was still able to segue Christianity into a love for humanity, not just other Christians. And that takes a lot of strength, takes a lot of character for me to be able to respect you as you are. Anybody can say, look, I'll love you as long as you change. But can you love me if I just remain who I am and actually serve me? Jesus didn't just he didn't feed 5,000 Christians. So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get into it. Next question. I'm trying. All right, now somebody didn't follow my instructions. Okay. All of you mentioned positive influence of your grandparents. What great note did they impart to you that you still carry with you? Something that grandparent imparted to you that you still carry with you. And after that, I have my last question.
My grandmother imparted in me singing. She would teach me these songs concerning my faith, and it was even before I even came to Christ. Like Pastor Austin was saying, at first it was heritage, but then my grandmother, she was the first person I was able to see have a relationship with Christ. So that's something that my grandmother put in me.
Mr. Rouse. I'm not going to fall into that trap.
Sorry, you can thank her. My grandmother told me people don't have to do what they do for you. And that's something that really stuck with me, and I hear my mom repeat, my grandma. But and to kind of talk back and bridge it with the last question, the way the question was asked to me is that, like Pastor was saying, you're looking for like-minded people, but you have to try to meet people where they are. So try to connect to someone as a human being versus just, I'm looking for someone who's of my same faith, of my same demographic, of my same socioeconomic status. I think that's part of the disconnect. But my grandmother wasn't influenced, but I think, I know it's a cliche to say it, and because of the way our society is built, it's not as practical anymore. But the village has to raise a child as well. So bringing, to me, my parents were extremely strong influence on me, but if I would hear someone a guy at the barbershop say something to me,
Yeah.
or a guy, somebody in church, kind of tell me, hey, this is what you should do, or this is something good for you. That means a lot more sometimes, especially in your younger years, when you're a teenager and you're kind of rebelling against your parents. It means a lot to hear that from someone else and say, hey, watch out, young man, this is what you should do. This is the way you should go.
Something my grandmother imparted in me. I remember growing up, being little, I was kind of tied to my mom's hip all the time. So like I wouldn't break away for anything. But when I did stay with my grandmother, I didn't really want to talk because I was uncomfortable with people other than my parents and my sister. So I remember we were in her house and she asked me something. I shook my head to answer. And she told me, she was like, don't you ever do that to anyone. If you have something to say, you say it with your mouth. You don't shake your head. So just instilling that I don't have to be afraid to answer to anybody. I don't have to be afraid to speak up, even if it offends somebody, even if it is contrary to what somebody else believes. Like I can be true to what I have to say. And I struggle with that still, being timid and being afraid to be bold, but I still see that in the back of my mind. Like that moment, just...
You were shook, man.
Right, I really was. Like I couldn't believe it because before then I had never been scolded by my grandmother. Like you don't shake your head to answer. And just, holding yourself a certain way as a young lady, like things like that was imparted in me by her. So I still try to carry myself that way.
I wish I could be there when your first grandchild nods their head.
No.
Boy, God bless me.
For me, it was so many lessons. Like you said, the village was important. But if I were to take one thing from my grandmother, she gave me a thick skin at a very early age. And she used to always say, baby, they gonna talk about you till you're dead in the grave. Stuff like that don't resonate till you get, older. And she used to say, they gonna say what they want to say. You can't be responsible for what they say. All you can be responsible for is your response. And I used to be like, what is all this? What do you mean? And I didn't understand it. So when you get into acting, like I did at an early age, and you be that kid on stage in high school in the tight pants and the uniform and outfit looking like a fool amongst your peers, and they're laughing, because everybody had to come to the plays in school. They gathered all the children. Oh, first period gonna be here? Everybody gonna see it. So it's like everybody's laughing. I had to develop that thick skin and not care what other people thought of me very, very early. And that goes into the race, that goes into everything. It just covered me across the board. And now you don't fall into the ignorance that you hear. You can let people talk. It's almost like stuff hits you like water, and they roll off, and you smile. You smile at all the crazes that you hear. So I thank God that she gave me that thick skin, because it took me a very long way. Because in this society, as a man, as a black man, they're waiting on you. The enemy is waiting on you to snap. They want you to go there. They push that. And she said, never give them your button. Never give somebody else your button where they can just push it and they can make you do what they want you to do. So that kept me out of jail, kept me out of trouble, and it covers the whole board, even in relationships. It kept my marriage together. Shoot.
All right, last question. I don't know this one. I've never met him. But last question.
You should be a preacher. That's very good.
But you don't know the characters that he plays. So. All right, this is a very important question. How can an organization like the NAACP attract and encourage millennials to join and get involved?
Amen. Let me lie that one. Ask that again. Ask that one.
How can an organization, she's videoing, how can an organization like the NAACP attract and encourage millennials to join and get involved? Let's get in the struggle.
Get involved.
I think it needs to, honestly speak frankly, it needs an overhaul. It needs to be modernized to me. I would go to a lot of the meetings, and when I was younger, I would be the youngest person by 30, 40 years, you know. And the question is, how do you get people in? But you know, I mean, you can create, you know, social media presence, things like that. But just creating that. I think the best part would be create events for millennials or young people to come to. And you might have to, you know, I know it's hard to get out young people, and I know sometimes they might say it's lame, but I've worked briefly up in Atlanta teaching kids at Washington High School, so I'm kind of familiar with trying to get the younger generation mobilized. But a lot of times they would, you know, I would teach them science lessons, and they'd be like, "Oh, this is stupid, this is lame," but halfway through something would click, and you just kind of have to be. Just like he was saying earlier, you have to have some thick skin and take a little bit of that backlash that you might get, but they really do need that. But I think you need to revamp and kind of modernize and look internally, what can we do to reach out?
I would just piggyback on what he's saying. A lot of times when you see the older generation try to reach a younger generation, they'll do something like put these outfits on and start trying to dress all crazy and then put my throwback jersey on and my hat because we're doing a youth service. So put my Jordans on. And it's almost, you know, it's almost insulting. It's like, let me just, I know you 50, just be 50. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, just be real, be practical. And be honest and vulnerable enough to say, you know what, I don't understand you guys. Just be honest, like, I don't understand. Could you help me understand your thought process behind this, behind that? And meet them where they are and say, hey, what would you be interested in seeing? What can I do in your community that would make you want to get involved? What are the issues that you're seeing? Because just because they're young don't mean they don't have intelligence. Just because they're young doesn't mean they don't know what's going on. It's some people who are 9, 10 years old who go home to things that grown people probably have no idea that they're experiencing. I've been places I've seen 8, 9-year-olds selling drugs, selling crack, you know. So it's like you just don't know. I've seen 12-year-old murderers, you know what I'm saying? So you have to understand that everybody has a voice, everybody has to understand the other perspective and not just limit the truth to what you think the truth is, and be open to change and just meet everyone where they are. I think you'd be a lot more effective. And then we just live in a world where positivity is just really not cool. You know, like you listen to the music we listen to, it's a lot of negativity. You look at the movies, they always kind of put out that negative message, so you got negative, negative, negative. So when somebody comes with something positive, it takes a real bold young person to say, you know what, I'm going to go against the grain of what's going on and stand for something that makes sense, or something that's positive. And be patient. Understand it's going to be a process. Like when you invest into something, if I invest into a stock, I'm not going to be a millionaire overnight. I have to continue to invest and be faithful. And when you build relationships with people, you can't just show up one day and then think, okay, I showed up, I did my deed. Like, if you're really serious about it, invest your time and your energy and pour into these people's lives so they can know you're serious. Because how many people come and say, you need to do this, young man, you need to do this, you need to do that, and they disappear and go off to their nice house or whatever. But I got to go home and still deal with this same stuff after you gave me this powerful speech. I still got to go home and try to figure out life, you know. So invest into people and be committed and be consistent. If you're not consistent, you might as well just give it up, because they're not going to respect it.
And the church said. All right, let's see. 15 seconds. If you had one word or one phrase you could give to help every other particular age group understand millennials better, what would it be? 15 seconds.
Okay.
I guess, like we've been saying, I got two, perspective and listen. Two biggest things. We are a gray area, I think, generation. We're more moderate than generations before. So just gain perspective. And I'd say listen. think that's the best thing we can do.
Shamika, 15 seconds. Huh?
Understand?
Understand. All right. Natasha.
Gotcha.
Jesus.
Jesus. You can't just trump everybody. You're gonna drop the ace of spades. Like, Morris.
I would say perfectionist. Some of us aren't lazy. Some of us are raised, with a good honesty and hard work, and we want to make our parents and predecessors proud. So we have more to prove.
Okay. Wow. Ooh, very good. Perfectionism. Okay. All right.
I would say have an open mind, understand and listen. That's how we're gonna, overcome a lot of our differences and lack of communication. It's just having an open mind and understanding.
All right. James.
I say, truth is bigger than one person's reality.
Hey, you Socrates. That's what's up. Mr. Rouse.
We're an extension of yourselves. So if your arm was hurting, you wouldn't blame your arm and say, what are you doing? You would try to figure out a solution. So that's what
Mr. Rouse, truly you are waxing philosophical. Kristen.
I would say willingness and compromise. We are a lot more willing than y'all think we are. And compromise on both ends. Like we're both teachable. We both have stuff to learn.
All right, ladies and gents, let's give our panelists a big. I want to say that you are some rich people.
Yes.
No, I mean that from the bottom of my heart. You're some rich people because you're broad and you're willing to entertain other perspectives other than your own. And so I just want to applaud you and thank you for being willing to just step into this role. It's challenging. It takes a lot of courage. And I appreciate you for that. And our group wants to give you guys some tokens of appreciation.
Let's give them another round.